Okay.
This is bothering me.
What's wrong? Is it my eye or something?
There's a hair. Okay. I think I got it. Let me
Sure, it wasn't a
Sure,
giant
fine,
eyebrow.
Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. If you joined us
Hi.
last week, then you know we did a video on what makes a query blurb, and it's only right that we follow that up with what breaks a query blurb. So we've got 6
Will we
reasons.
be putting that in the description below
Sure.
so they know how to link back
Sure.
and forth the two?
Sure. So we have 6 reasons to complement our 6 make reasons. And so the first reason, we're just going to launch into, is that your blurb discusses themes of the book too much.
Oh, my pet peeve.
Yeah.
Oh, this drives me nuts.
Yeah, have at it, Kim.
I just
Well, we could be
want to
here
know
for
what
hours.
happens. That's what it is. I don't want to know I just want to know what happens. I think people get caught up in the theme and the central theme and what brings us all together and
The lessons they learn.
yes, and I just want to know what happens, because that is what sets your book apart from every other manuscript in my inbox.
Number 2, too much backstory or world building info in that. Wow. Number 2, too much backstory or world building info in that little space of a blurb. So you can get lost. I guess I'm taking this one. So I think you can get lost,
Oh, you got
especially
this.
in sci-fi fantasy. You can get lost in setting up the world for your reader. And I think if you can't boil those plot points and world building points down to something that's going to hook us in, then you don't have a clear, concise hook that's going to get your reader. So
But I think it's going to the theme. Like, the world should be coming through in your description
Right.
of the blurb. It shouldn't have to be explained outside of it.
right. Number 3 is that your query blurb is less of a blurb, more of a tagline.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I will get queries that are maybe 4 sentences that will just say, I mean, it doesn't even say, hey, what's up, Jessica? It's just, this is a, worldly adventure of a woman who is just divorced and is moving on with her life. That's a tagline. That's
Right.
not actually a blurb.
Not
It doesn't.
a good tagline either.
It's not. It's a terrible tagline.
No
Luckily,
offense.
I am not writing a book. But that's Buford again. Apologies. You're annoying.
Buford giggles too.
That was harsh. Look at his face.
Look, he's grumbling at me now. He's so irritated. Anyway. So, yes. So, the blurb really has to be like the back cover copy. It has to tell us about, what the inciting factors are in the book, what the conflict is, all of that. And just telling me in 1 or 2 sentences sort of a tagline about your book, which also can match up with the themes, doesn't entice me or excite me to want to read more.
It's
Ever.
true. Yes. And on the flip side of that, number 4 is that your query blurb is more of a synopsis. It's far too long, which
I've been seeing a lot more of this lately.
nobody wants to read that.
No,
I don't. I'll be honest.
it loses my attention.
If I have to really dig deep into a query more than 2 to 3 paragraphs, I just tend to reject it because I figure your query is so overwritten, your book must be the same way.
Number 5 is that your query has too much about the character and not enough about the plot. So this one irks me as well, I will admit. I think even if your book is character driven, something has to happen. And if I'm just getting your character's biography, unless it is an actual biography, I don't want to read that.
But even an actual biography, I have to know there has to be a plot.
Right. I think authors just fall in love so much with their
Yes.
characters. They just want you to know everything there is to know about them. But
Which I get, and it's important that you fleshed out your character and that you have this rapport with the character, but we need to learn that in the book. You need to get us to read the book with this blurb, and telling us their life story is not doing that.
Yeah.
And our last reason is kind of pulling on our reason from the last video about conflict, and that your query blurb has a lack of conflict or plot holes, evident plot holes.
Oh.
Yeah. Jessica's got a good story for this one.
These are actually my favorite, and when I'm reading queries, it's the plot holes that always make me shout something out loud in the office. But when I'm reading your query, if I read something about, let's say you're writing a suspense, and there was a giant house fire, and you say the house fire destroyed everything, but the police found a letter left behind as evidence. My thought is, the house fire destroyed everything. How is it that a piece of paper was left behind? And that to me is an evident plot hole that, again, shows me that there's probably a lot of plot holes in your book that aren't matching up. So that's going to be a pass for me.
Right. Or even on the lack of conflict side, if you say you took all of our advice and your blurb is discussing the conflict, but the conflict doesn't have really great stakes, or it's so minor that if the character did this one thing, it could be avoided. Something like that, where the conflict really doesn't produce a good story. I think that it's going to lead us to not want to read it.
Yeah.
If there's not a conflict in your blurb, we're afraid there's no conflict in your book, and that's a big issue.
And if you
You
can't
can't just add a conflict.
I know I said this in the other video, but I think it bears repeating. If you're writing your blurb and you're not finding the conflict, or the conflict isn't standing out, then use the blurb as part of your writing process. Go back and look at your book. Because if you're really struggling that hard, in my opinion, to write the blurb, then it's because there's a larger problem with the book itself. And I don't think query blurbs and synopsis and manuscripts should be separate pieces. I think they should be all entwined. And when you're writing any one of the three, it has to work with all of them, and then it kind of shows how the book is working.
Yeah, well said. So if you're finding you're having trouble writing your blurb, or you're just starting to write your blurb, I hope these 2 videos give you that sort of direction and how you're supposed to hook us. So good luck.